Welcome to Between the Lines, the podcast where we explore the ever-evolving landscape for public power utilities, including topics like cybersecurity.
I'm Josh. This is Sarah. We're here to share thoughts, discuss challenges, and spotlight solutions to keep the power flowing and the grid protected.
In each episode, we'll bring experts in the field to share their experiences and insights.
From cutting-edge technologies to best practices, we'll cover it all, ensuring you're equipped with the information you need to stay ahead of the curve.
Today, we're thrilled to have Clint Whitney and Andrew Thomé with us. Clint Whitney became the City of Richland's Energy Services Director in April 2018 and was also appointed to the Energy Northwest Board of Directors at that time. Mr. Whitney has worked in public service for 27 years in a variety of electrical engineering, operations, and management positions. He started at the city as an electrical distribution engineer, and prior to that, worked for 5 years with electrical utilities at the Hanford site. Mr. Whitney has a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering and a Master's in Business Administration degree from Washington State University. He is licensed professional engineer in Washington, past IEEE section chair, and served on various electric utility committees.
Andrew Thomé has worked at Energy Northwest for 20 years, serving security and in various roles within information services. He worked in application and database development, system analysis, and database administration. He is currently supervising the corporate cybersecurity group. Mr. Thomé possesses a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Washington State University in Management Information Systems and a Master's of Science degree from Western Governors University in Information Security and Software Assurance. Stay tuned as we dive into the engaging conversation with Clint and Andrew about what it looks like to be guardians of the grid and explore the importance of cybersecurity in the public utility sector. All right, well, thanks, Clint and Andrew, for coming here today and agreeing to be on our podcast. So if we could just start getting into some of the information here and really dive into the public utility sector. And Clint, being that from the City of Richland and your background, can you give us a little information on the public utility sector and just kind of talk through the different types of utilities out there and maybe some of the critical infrastructure?
Sure. So I agree. Thank you for being here and letting us be here. First of all, this is great. So our public utility sectors are community-owned utilities, and they have boards and commissions, councils that are elected and represent the community. And that's what defines our public utility sectors. And the various utilities within that are our water, our electric, our sewer, our solid waste utilities. And so they're what keep our communities operating and what our communities depend upon.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And Andrew, I know you've worked out at Energy Northwest for a while and been in cybersecurity. Can you kind of maybe go over some of the vulnerabilities that we see in public utilities and your utility from a cybersecurity standpoint?
Absolutely. The vulnerabilities are, they're pretty broad, so I don't want to make it too general of an answer, but you have physical security vulnerabilities, you have cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and sometimes those two come together. Physical security vulnerabilities can absolutely create cybersecurity vulnerabilities. You have, the social engineering, which is kind of a cybersecurity vulnerability, but people can be a vulnerability, which is always a challenge too. So pretty much, unfortunately, probably more vulnerabilities than we can probably really classify. But yeah, key ones being physical security, computer cybersecurity, and people typically.
Yeah, and Clint, you see similar vulnerabilities with the utility, right?
We do, yeah. It's the people, it's the physical, it's the remote, and it's trying to keep our critical infrastructure that our community depends upon. Keep the water flowing, keep the power on, keep the air conditioners running, heating running. It's what our community depends upon.
And based on that infrastructure and those critical items that you're trying to protect, how important is it to train the people at the utilities to be aware of cybersecurity issues, be aware of those vulnerabilities?
I'd say training is really important, but we don't want to overdo it as well. So there's a fine line there, which is tricky, right? I mean, we don't want to spend so much time training that people aren't able to that people get overwhelmed by it and feel like everything could be a threat. But we want people to be aware. So I mean, awareness training is kind of the key phrase a lot of times. So I want people to be aware of the threats, be aware of what could be out there and what the different threats could look like. But we don't want to like clog up their day with training all the time. But yeah.
But it's an ongoing. You always have to keep up with our cyber security training, and for all of our employees, it's as much as we work on training and keeping everyone aware. The bad actors are out there working just as hard, and so we're trying to keep up as much as possible. It's hard to stay ahead, but if we can stay very close, we're hopefully protecting as best we can.
That's true. And so that being said, what are some of the common threats that you guys see from a public utility standpoint? What are some of the things that kind of creep into the daily mix?
Well, I think from my perspective, what we see a lot is the phishing, spear phishing and regular phishing, which email campaigns to try to get people's credentials. I'm sure, Clint, on your side, I'm sure with the generation, with the transmission capabilities that you oversee, I'm sure there are other threats there too that you guys see as well that are more physical in nature.
Yeah, definitely the physical security is a threat for us. It's what we don't know is that we worry about on that. But cybersecurity and physical security. It's components down to the component. We used to be able to trust something that you'd buy off the shelf, but now we need to know where it's made and who maintains it, and so it's more than just physical. It's that unknown of what's in our system that we don't know about.
That's true.
Do you feel like threats have changed each year and it looks different for security each year, or is it pretty similar?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Threats are always changing. It's a constantly changing environment with threats. And we try to stay up on that. We have industry groups that share information. The federal government shares information with us as well about different threats that are coming along, but it's constantly changing. It's part of the challenge is that it's never static. It's always different.
I can remember back to Y2K and the preparations that we did for that, and that was eye-opening, of course, for all of us. But Sarah, you mentioned how things have changed, and our infrastructure that protects our electric utility relays, protective relays, they were analog devices at the time, and so we didn't have to worry about microprocessor based, and now everything's plugged in with fiber or Ethernet or wireless, and so the modernization of the infrastructure has definitely changed and increased some of that risk and unknowns.
That's for sure. Andrew, can you explain a little bit more when you were talking about phishing and spear phishing? I assume you don't mean off of the coast on a boat, right? Can you give our listeners a little more information on what that kind of looks like?
Sure. So different groups will, or just malicious individuals will send out emails, sometimes to just a blanket email across an entire organization or whatever email addresses they can find. And typically they'll either embed a link or some other sort of payload, whether that's an attachment or whatnot, to a file. And then with the hopes that the person who opens the email will then click the link or click that attachment, and that will trigger some sort of malicious activity, which could steal credentials or create some kind of backdoor channel into their computer system. So that's kind of the phishing realm. The spear phishing is when they actually have specific people that they're trying to target. So if they know, if they've done some research, they know who your executives are, or they know particular people in the organization that they want to target, then they spear phish. And so same tactic, but tailored toward specific people.
Okay. What are some of the tools that companies can use to make their employees more aware of these things as they come up and evolve every year?
Sure, there are a lot of tools out there. Microsoft, of course, big player in it, but they have Sentinel and Defender, which are two different tools that allow you to monitor for any sort of strange activity on your systems and give you alerts, prevent that from happening. But there are all sorts of players out there that make all sorts of tools. But yeah, Microsoft's probably one of the biggest ones out there with their tools.
Have you ever clicked on a phishing?
I was going to say, the $20 Amazon gift cards are tempting. But
It evolved because it used to be a prince, right? That was needing money and wanting something taken forward.
It has evolved. It's evolved from bad spelling and grammatical errors, and so where we used to be able to see an email and say, yeah, that looks suspicious, and but now, and my fear is as things have evolved, is we have much more AI generated letters, and so how is that gonna how difficult is that gonna be able to see and be able to tell whether an email or a click is safe or not? So it's going to be scary.
Won't be long before the AI stops putting 6 fingers on everything, and you won't be able to tell the difference, right?
We need AI to tell us, to flag some of these for us, and AI to find AI.
yeah, but that's a great example, on how these things have evolved over time is, these phishing campaigns used to be very obvious. And now, they have so many of our details. They can have our department name, they can have our coworkers' names. And it's hard to teach, employees to not trust everything that you see and to question.
Yeah.
That's a really important point. And in the public sector and community-owned utilities, we're very customer focused. And so if we get an email come in, it's in our DNA as employees to want to be able to help and to respond. And that's the thing that's difficult to train into our employees is be compassionate, be ready to help, but also be leery.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think from a nuclear standpoint out at Columbia, there's a lot more risk adverseness there, and you feel like everything's trying to attack you at any one given time. So that's a good point, Clint. From a culture of the city perspective, it's got to be a little bit more difficult with the folks there that you have to keep them aware and not keep them customer focused, but also keep them aware that these things are also scary and out there.
it's trying to thread that line is to be aware and to help, to respond, but also question.
Yes.
And it's not there's nothing wrong with asking twice on that. Does this make sense? Did my boss really want me to do this? And so.
Well, I think that's a great lead into our next question, which is, why do you think public utilities are an attractive target for cyber attacks? Even energy industry, we're starting to see it more and more.
Well, I think some of its notoriety on that is being able to hit the newspaper or media or out there, because utilities serve all customers eventually somewhere. But a utility could serve millions of customers. And so an attack on a utility just got 1 million victims and on that. And so it's number one, notoriety. It's got to be rewarding for them financially, for them to continue to do this. And maybe it's a little bit of a challenge on that. And so so there has been successes on it, and so it will continue on that. But Sarah, I think that's part of the reason as to why utilities get singled out on this.
I think unfortunately too, there could be like a national defense component of it as well. Looking back at the attacks that presaged the Russian invasion of Ukraine back in 2015, 2016, and then the attempted attack in 2022, bad actors were able to attack the Ukrainian power grid and demonstrate that they could take down infrastructure before that war broke out. But it really kind of looks like from the research that's been done that was just a demonstration of their capabilities and their power to try to influence Ukraine to not fight back, or a demonstration of what they could do in case there was an invasion. So unfortunately, hopefully we never have to face anything like that here in the United States, but unfortunately I think it's a reality that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, it's training as well for some of these bad actors.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point as well, Sarah, with the equipment and stuff like that people are coming in to buy and making sure that that's coming from the right area. I don't know if you guys can speak to what your organizations are doing as far as making sure that the supply chain is also protected as you bring stuff in and implement new digital assets.
Well, I wish we could go back to the analog days when it came to cybersecurity, but that's gone, and so we'll continue having to utilize very modern technology, and some of it is trusted partners, trusted manufacturers, and manufacturers that we've done business with for years, and we're fortunate to have at least one of those in the Pacific Northwest. And market leader, and so it's somewhat reassuring when we see our supply chain manufacturers that are keeping up with cybersecurity, taking it as serious as we are, and versus not seeing anything from them. So having them demonstrate and that they are aware of cybersecurity issues is more comforting for us. But it's part of that due diligence, though, that we all have to do, is to vet our companies to make sure that they're doing the things that we want them to do and need to do.
Okay. Are there any particular set of standards or information that you ask from a vendor perspective to make sure that they are, in compliance? Is it from a city or a state or a governmental perspective? Is that
for our particular industry? We can only, there's a very limited number of countries we can accept products from, and typically it's U.S. made products, but there are some variations there. But typically we really kind of limit where we can accept products for critical critical industry things. Like, of course we can get desktop computers that are made in China, but for our OT systems, or for anything that could be operational technology systems, anything that could run the plant or could be affect the safety or availability to produce power, then we have very strict limitations as to where those products can be made, what countries those products can be made in.
So you bring up a good point. I think it's looking at that additional risk step. So that's another thing that we really didn't have to worry about when we had the analog equipment, right? So there's another step that you have to look at from a perspective of where is this piece of equipment or where is this thing going to be used at, and assessing that risk of what the potentials are for compromise, right? And
it's hard because you don't always you really have to think down the road, and sometimes how you expect a piece of equipment to be used initially, maybe it gets used in a more vital way later on as it's been integrated into your business processes, and so you really have to kind of put way more thought into the life cycle of this particular piece of equipment than maybe you would have normally, because maybe it starts out as just being something that's a corporate item and has very little impact on any safety system, but then maybe it moves into part of your emergency preparedness group, and they put a lot of effort into using it, and it becomes a key component of their work and the stuff they're working on. So you have to really plan those things out ahead of time and really think about those impacts, which is not something we always did in the past. Yeah. So it's a new thing for us to do, to really think about those components and their long-term use.
And I would add on to that is knowing where it's going to be utilized. Is it within the business network, or is it on the external that's going to be customer facing? And so the due diligence could be different on that for knowing where it's going to be utilized. Mm-hmm. And so, because you're right, it does change. Mm-hmm. It could change through its life cycle.
It really shows the complexities of cybersecurity, because as you mentioned, it's not just one process. It's multiple processes. It's communicating it with your whole organization, and also not just your own organization, but your vendors and your partners. Yeah. There's lots of different vulnerabilities in all areas.
That's a great point. And how do you stay up with technology, right? How do you have the newer workforce coming in that wants to use AI, they want to use tools that may have not been vetted before. How do you deal with that at the city, Clint, when somebody comes up with you with a new idea that says, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread and we want to start using it tomorrow?
That's always a tough one. There's you never want to stymie excitement or new ideas. but there's that cautiousness in it. And so it's balancing encouraging new ideas to employees to bring new ideas, new processes into our work, but also then to be asking the questions and helping the employees. Well, this is great, but have you thought of this? And is there a risk or is there a vulnerability? And so it's encouraging. It's keeping to that encouragement. But also encouraging the employees to make sure that our processes for security and supply chain are not compromised.
Okay.
I think too, unfortunately, as cybersecurity, we're kind of used to being the bad guy a little bit, So that's, but it's in a good way. But I think it also, as you build that awareness, so we kind of talked about previously the awareness training, at least in our organization, people are really good about being cybersecurity aware. And if you say, hey, we need to look at this from a cybersecurity perspective, they're usually really open to that because, there's so many threats out that we hear about all the time. So they're really good about that. But yeah, having processes in place that so you're gonna vet things and you're gonna know, they're gonna know when they bring something in. You're not just gonna adopt it like, okay, no, we have to go through our process. We're gonna evaluate this. Unfortunately, it slows down creativity a little bit, but unfortunately, it's a downside that we're willing to accept. We have to accept to be able to make sure that we're all safe and secure. But yeah, we have to play the bad guy sometimes a little bit as a cybersecurity person. But hopefully, that makes us safer in the long run.
On a scale of 1 to 10, will an employee like to talk to a QA person or a cybersecurity?
Oh, I'd say cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity guy. Having worked with QA, I would say.
The other side of this, do you want to talk to the CEO why you clicked explain why you did this?
There's that after action report that you're going to go, why did you make this decision?
Yeah, what were you thinking when you did that?
I wasn't thinking, sir. To all the risks. So everything we've kind of talked about today, is there any advice, any best practices that you guys can bring to the table and kind of maybe talk to some of the other utilities out there or talk to some of the different size utilities to say, hey, if you're coming into this or you're trying to figure out how to navigate this landscape, maybe a couple words of advice.
Well, we're not alone on that, and while we may work in a small utility, there's experience from the other utilities, and so working collaboratively and to share our experiences and our knowledge. NERC has set up some great cybersecurity policies, protocols to help us establish policies and SIP standards, and they're not fun to work through, but if we collaborate with others and share those experiences, what works, it does help bring each of the utilities forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say kind of piggybacking off of what Clint said, operating experience. So gaining other people's experience, not having to go through the process yourself, having to live through the negative impacts yourself. So there are all sorts of groups out there. The MSISAC, EISAC specifically for electrical grid. Even getting in contact, making sure that you have a contact with CISA, which is the federal agency for cybersecurity. But making sure you have all those contacts set up and getting that information because they share information all the time about different threats that are out there, different things people have seen. People are really good about reporting that. So making sure that you're reporting anything you see so you can help other people, but also looking at those reports, being able to take that information in and reporting it to CISA if you have problems so they can register that as well and hopefully help prevent other agencies from being exposed to that.
Yeah, that's great. So I saw about 5 years ago, there used to be this mindset in cybersecurity with public power that it won't happen to me, especially when about 5 years ago, all the news reports were on large utilities or big cities, not necessarily small rural. But now we see more of a preventative approach rather than I'm just going to avoid it, it's not going to happen to me. Where do you think that shift happened? And do you think it's important for utilities to be of the preventative mindset?
I think NERC has helped with that. Is utilities had to register years ago, and work through those cybersecurity policies. And so I think for sure that was helpful in doing that. But it's bringing cybersecurity to the small utilities, I should say. We also, being a small utility, we also recognize that we have the limited resources to protect ourselves and our customers for it, but we're also can have some of the highest vulnerability, being the smallest, and so it's even more important for the smallest utilities to be aware and more diligent than some of the larger utilities.
So from everything we've talked today, previous cybersecurity items, training, employee awareness, phishing campaigns, not boat related, what do you see as the future of cybersecurity? You know, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, what does the landscape look like from a utility standpoint?
That's a tough question. But at the moment, from the outside, I think it'd be hard to say that AI won't be involved. So I think some sort of, whether it's AI threats or AI defense or both, AI fighting AI, I don't know.
Playing against each other, like it's kind of video game.
I don't know, but it's hard to say because things change so fast, and who knows. But it seems like AI will be involved, I would think.
I 100% agree. It's going to be there. It's already there. The letters that you see, emails that we talked about earlier are already better. And so we need to figure out how to utilize AI for the benefit on this, is identify those suspicious ones and that we're not seeing. And so, I would agree. AI is going to be, it's either going to help us or it's going to hurt us. We might as well figure out how to get it to help us.
There you go.
Well, it sounds like with utilities, small or large, there's things that every utility and every company in the energy sector can do to prevent cybersecurity and be as educated and empowered as possible. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah, there are resources out there. Everybody can take advantage of those resources and at least get up to a basic level of cybersecurity compliance and really benefit their communities.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Appreciate you guys coming out to have the discussion on cybersecurity and how we can help improve cybersecurity for our utilities and just sharing your experiences with us. So I appreciate it. And
thank you for being here.
thank you, Josh. Thank you, Sarah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Between the Lines. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with your colleagues and feel free to reach us at itmemberservices@energy-northwest.com.
Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be diving into securing tomorrow and exploring the future of cybersecurity in public utilities. Until then, take care and keep exploring and supporting the world of public utilities.